Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into the fascinating structural pivots that transformed Amazon from a tiny, garage-based online bookstore into the literal backbone of the modern internet. We aren't just looking at a retail giant here, We're analyzing the entire foundation of what you could call an ambient conglomerate. Let's get right into it.
Now, to truly grasp the jaw-dropping scale of this company today, just consider this one single metric. Amazon recently delivered 1.5 billion packages globally. But wait, here's the kicker. That was using just their electric vehicle fleet. That's right, that's not their entire delivery operation. That is just the packages delivered by their EVs in a single year. It's honestly an almost incomprehensible level of logistical coordination. But, this massive global footprint, it actually started with a very personal, incredibly simple philosophy back in 1994. Jeff Bezos famously walked away from a highly lucrative Wall Street job at D.E. Shaw to start this whole thing. Why? Well, it all came down to what he called the regret minimization framework. He realized that, looking back in his old age, he wouldn't regret trying and failing to be part of the rapidly emerging internet, but he would absolutely 100% regret not trying at all.
So, Section 1, the regret minimization framework. Let's explore how that deep desire to avoid missing out on the early internet sparked a completely new architectural model for retail.
When we look at their early timeline, you can really see the foundation being laid. Bezos originally incorporated the company in a Bellevue garage in 1994 as Cadabra, as in abracadabra, before very wisely renaming it Amazon. They launched as a heavily discounted online bookstore in 1995, and by 1997, they went public, raising $54 million. But what's really fascinating here is the core strategy they outlined in their very first 1997 shareholder letter. They made it incredibly clear they were intentionally sacrificing short-term profit to capture long-term market share. They were building an infrastructure, right from the start, not just a storefront. And nothing illustrates that sheer contrast through scale better than their raw revenue growth. In their very first year of operation, 1995, Amazon brought in just over $500,000. Now, fast forward to 2023, and they are pulling in nearly $575 billion in total revenue, with over $30 billion in net profit. That level of hypergrowth, it required them to continually rip up and reinvent their own structural foundations.
That brings us to Section 2, spinning the Amazon flywheel. To survive catastrophic market events like the dot-com crash of 2001, Amazon realized they couldn't just sell books anymore. They had to fundamentally shift their architecture. And that shift birthed the famed Amazon flywheel, or virtuous cycle. It's essentially the core economic engine of the entire company. Here's how it works. It starts with improving the customer experience, which naturally drives more traffic to the site. That massive audience, well, it attracts third-party sellers. More sellers mean a vastly expanded selection of goods. As this whole thing scales up, Amazon leverages the sheer volume to lower its own cost structure, which allows them to lower prices, which, you guessed it, improves the customer experience. And the flywheel just spins faster and faster. But building this multi-sided platform was a really tough nut to crack. Before they got it right, they actually failed twice. First, they tried Amazon auctions to compete with eBay. Total flop. Then they tried Z-shops, giving sellers their own storefront tabs. That also failed because sellers were completely isolated from Amazon's main web traffic. So the ultimate solution? Amazon Marketplace. They made the incredibly radical structural decision to co-locate third-party listings directly on the same product pages as their own first-party inventory. They literally forced their own retail arm to compete on price with outsiders, all just to guarantee that the customer, you, found the best deal, even if Amazon didn't make the direct sale. This constant need to reinvent their structure, even when it means disrupting their own core business, is deeply anchored in their day one corporate ethos. As Jeff Bezos bluntly explained to his shareholders, day two is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. And that is why it is always day one. To Amazon, acting like a scrappy startup on its very first day is literally the only way to avoid the eventual decay that plagues most massive corporations.
Moving on to Section 3, the cloud computing revolution. Now, what's really interesting about this next major pivot is how an internal engineering headache actually birthed a product that completely revolutionized the modern internet. Back in the early 2000s, as Amazon was scaling at breakneck speed, they realized they had a huge bottleneck. Their engineers were spending up to 70% of their time just managing servers, storage, and networking databases.
They coined a term for this: undifferentiated heavy lifting. It was absolutely essential work, for sure, but it added zero direct value to the customer experience. It was basically just keeping the lights on. So, to solve this, they standardized their internal hardware and decided to isolate these computing components into managed a la carte services. They essentially built an operating system of the internet. By 2006, they opened this up to the public as Amazon Web Services, or AWS, pioneering cloud infrastructure as a service. Suddenly, startups didn't need to buy a physical service anymore. They could just rent computing power directly from Amazon. This clever internal solution quickly became the digital backbone for massive platforms we use every day, like Netflix, Dropbox, and Reddit. And this pivot was absolutely monumental. By solving their own internal server bottleneck, they created AWS, a standalone juggernaut that generated over $90 billion in 2023 alone. And you can really see the results of this in their revenue breakdown. The flywheel is now incredibly diversified: $231 billion from their own online stores, $140 billion from third-party sellers, and huge chunks from advertising and subscriptions. Okay, Section 4, Scaling a Sustainable Infrastructure. Let's take a look at how Amazon is currently attempting to future-proof this massive physical and digital footprint they've built. Operating data centers and global delivery logistics takes a tremendous toll on the environment. Recognizing the immense impact of their scale, Amazon actually co-founded the Climate Pledge in 2019. And their commitment is bold, achieving net zero carbon emissions across all global operations by 2040. That's a wildly aggressive target, set a full 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement. And they aren't trying to do it alone either. They've brought 549 global corporate signatories on board and dispersed over $67 million to nature conservation. The really crucial point here, though, is their rapid execution. Back in 2019, they were matching 42% of their global operations with renewable energy. By 2021, that jumped to 85%. And by 2024, they successfully matched 100% of the electricity consumed by their global operations with renewable energy sources. They actually hit this target 5 years ahead of their original 2030 goal, leveraging hundreds of renewable energy projects worldwide. They are also actively transforming their physical transportation architecture. To drastically reduce their carbon footprint, Amazon set a goal to deploy 100,000 custom electric delivery vans by 2030. They already have over 31,400 of these EVs on the road today. They are fundamentally overhauling how goods reach your doorstep, trading internal combustion for carbon-free logistics. Which brings us to Section 5. Is it still day one? Bringing this all together, we can clearly see that the whole story of the foundation of Amazon isn't just about a bookstore surviving the dot-com bubble. It's the story of a company methodically building out the actual infrastructure of modern life. They've evolved into an ambient conglomerate. Think about it. Each major business unit started as a fix for an internal problem. The marketplace fixed their retail inventory limitations. AWS fixed their internal IT bottlenecks. Their massive fulfillment network fixed their reliance on external shippers. And now they're transitioning that entire backbone to run on 100% renewable energy. Which leaves us with a final, rather provocative thought. We started this journey with Jeff Bezos in a garage, driven by a fear of regret and a hyper-focused day one mentality. But today, as they operate the literal infrastructure of the internet, manage immense global logistics networks, and pull in well over $500 billion a year, the ultimate question remains: can a company of this sheer, unprecedented size and market dominance truly keep operating like a scrappy startup on its very first day? It's a question that's going to define the next decade of the modern economy. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how the world around you is built.